YouTube, what's going on? Thank you guys for checking out another one of my videos. My name is Chris Basio. This is my Basio Builds Wealth channel. I have another channel that focuses on barbering. I've been able to create a life for myself and my family and build multiple successful businesses within the barbering industry. And that's that channel. But I've had that channel for probably like 5-6 years. Yeah, like 5-6 years, and have seen a lot of things. I've had a lot of experiences, and so I want to create a channel on not just experiences, but giving my perspective with really cool topics that I'm gonna watch anyways. I'm addicted to YouTube, so I watch these things anyways, and I think it'd be cool to learn some new things together, but also cover some things from my experience. You know, being that I'm an entrepreneur and a businessman. So with that being said, guys, this video piqued my interest. I was checking out some of the videos that were on my timeline, and this one was cool. It said, we spent $30,000 trying to build a tiny house community, and it says unsuccessful. Guys, listen, I've been peeping this whole tiny house community arbitrage strategy, and typically what I've learned that they do, and why it's so attractive, is because you could potentially, without taking a commercial loan, taking a conventional loan, get into a piece of property, a small house on a big piece of land, get into it, gain control of the property, and start building little tiny houses on the property. Maybe the house has a little lake or something on the property. You could build little tiny homes around it. Some of them are called like glamp houses, things like that, and start Airbnb-ing it. And there's some people that are making some crazy money, and we'll get to those in the future. But I really want to see what happened with this couple here who got ambitious and had an idea and decided they were going to do something with it, and it looks like they kind of failed. But let's hear it from their words.
People talk about business failures. Not very often that people talk about $30,000 cash down the drain.
Been there.
Down the drain.
I'm like, hold on now. Dear Marique and Cote Nasa, you guys are an inspiration. And can we just say that baby Zalea is a living doll? We are saddened to hear that things didn't go well
baby's
with the
pretty.
effort to bring the neighbors on board with the tiny home project. But we agree that God must have some even bigger and better plans.
What I missed? What's going on here? Hold on, guys.
The video is going to be a little bit different.
All right, here we go. We back to it.
We're talking about failure. Even though this video is kind of not our normal and not as hype and excited and all these positive things happening in a weird sort of complex way, I'm actually kind of glad that we get to do this video. Bring people up to speed in case this is your first time on our channel. About 8 to 10 months ago, we started out on a venture to create a tiny house community within the city limits of Kansas City, Missouri, where we live. We started going through the city's website to understand everything that we needed to do from a zoning and planning and development standpoint. We bought a 4-acre parcel of land. There was lots of work going on behind the scenes in terms of advocacy work, working with city officials, planning departments, site planning, architects, landscape, all of these different components that go into the project. And we actually shared most of the journey right here on YouTube in a 5-part series that we called Building a Tiny House Community.
That's awesome,
well,
man.
Today, we essentially have to come and let you guys know that that project has been suspended indefinitely.
What?
We're confident that we have a solid business plan and we have more than enough interest in the project to make it come to life. But the location that we chose is one that we don't think we'll be able to make happen.
What happened?
So in purchasing this property, and even well before we purchased it, we spent a lot
zoning
of
issues,
research on what it would take to build a community like this, specifically at the land that we found. So we looked into what it would take to clear it,
engineering,
the grading of it, the utilities, what it would take for us to get the city members on board, the process that we would have to go with the city planning and development team. Like, there was a lot of things that we did to get prepared before we even bought the piece of land. But the one thing that we did not see, we didn't catch, which ended up being the most important thing, was the restrictive covenant. And so
this right here.
Yes.
Restrictive
essentially
covenant.
It's an older document that kind of governs the lots in the area where we bought. And there's specific language in there that prevents us from doing the type of project that we planned on doing.
You already bought it?
the letters and the font and the whole thing looks old and ancient, and that's kind of because it is. This was actually written back in 1945 when that big area was first purchased and broken up into individual lots to sell to homeowners. But unfortunately, most of what's in here is still 100% legally enforceable today. There's only
It's 2021, man.
That is not enforceable. It's still present in the document, but it's not enforceable.
We'll spare you the gory details of that.
But yeah, if you ever heard of redlining, segregation,
wow,
Same document.
same document.
So the only way that we would be able to get rid of this document or change it in order for us to be able
I don't know, man. I'm going to court, and just based off that, man, we need to avoid that document.
to use our land for what we intended to be would be to get 51% of the lot owners to vote in favor of our project. So you might remember a video a couple of weeks ago that we put out sharing our plans with the neighbors, trying to rally them behind us. Marie had actually worked tirelessly on this document. It had everything from what our project.
Yo, these guys are hustlers, man.
To what tiny homes are, to how they differ from different
They are
structures,
hustlers.
and how they could vote in favor of us moving forward with this project. So it's been about 2 weeks, a little bit over 2 weeks, and there was a small handful of people that are in favor of it, a small handful of people that were against it, and then the majority of the people we actually didn't hear anything from. So we needed about 51%, like we said, so that was like about 20 households, and we didn't get that.
Really kind of go back to what got in the way of this project. I would say there's probably two big issues, right? Number one, we didn't recognize that this was in effect. And then I think the other big miss for us on this project was not getting involved with the neighbors soon enough. You might be wondering how we missed this and how we didn't figure this out beforehand. And everything that's supposed to be posted online might not necessarily be posted online. And that's the problem we ran into. We got online, we got on the county clerk's office, recorder of deeds website. We found the original plat for that entire area. We found so much history of title with that property and who owned it before, and all of these other documents that are right there online where they're supposed to be. But this one, even though it's still on the books and it's still legally enforceable, we actually had to go down in person to the county clerk's office to get it. For whatever reason, it wasn't actually uploaded. The other big miss for us on this project. So just because your city's planning and development department has a certain order in which you must like plan out a development project on their website, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the most practical way that you should go about it. So for us, when we looked at the planning process, they had certain orders, and then somewhere around like step 3 or 4, which we hadn't got to yet, it was when they said you had to distribute your plans to I think every household that was within 300 feet of the property where the development was going to be taking place.
Wow.
Well, even though they had it as number 3 or 4 on the list, practically in real life, humans are different, right? So when we put lots of our plans together and we started kind of cleaning up the land just to like see what the slope of the land looked like, to them, they felt like, some of them, they felt like it was so much was already happening, and they had been kind of left out of the loop. So I think that's the other big one, is that we could have shared more information on the front end, rather than just going in the same order that the city had listed the steps in. And like she said, you know, most of the people's doors we went to about 40 doors. Most of them we didn't get an answer. Either they weren't home or they didn't answer, whatever. A few liked it. And then there was like, I think maybe 10 or 12 people that represented like
3 or 4
3 or 4 households that came down. And these folks were adamantly against the project. They did not like the idea whatsoever. And we dialogued with them. We stood out there and we, you know, shared what it was all about, who we are, what we were trying to do. And the one thing I walked away from the conversation with was they had already had so many ideas in their mind about what this was.
Indian huddles.
It didn't matter. Yeah, it didn't matter what we said.
They were defensive.
Them that, this wasn't going to be run down, poorly managed, not a good development. And that just goes back to what I was saying, is if we would have talked sooner, before people got the wrong idea, perhaps perhaps we might have had a better opportunity.
And I think a big reason why the few neighbors that did share their disapproval of our project was because they actually felt like we were getting ready to put up a trailer park, and they did not want that. And I think that is actually a big misconception that we never really fully talk about on our channel, because we're not here to bash anybody else or anybody's way of living. But we do understand that there is a huge difference between a tiny home and a trailer home, in an RV even. And we also understand and recognize the need for tiny homes on their own separate area.
Without recognizing that there were already certain restrictions against something like this, made our mind frame focus more so on what are the requirements of the city, right? Whereas we first needed to address the requirements of the neighborhood, and then we could move on to the city. We missed that part.
Yeah, so my mom was telling us it's time to be done recording.
Yeah, if you guys only knew, I mean, it's 5 o'clock. We've been trying to record this video since this morning around noon.
Wow.
And we're just now getting to this point. And so that's the gist of it. We're going to make sure our baby is taken care of. But that's the gist of it. That's kind of where we're at with the tiny house project in general. We do think we can still make this happen. We believe that we can find another property that's more suitable for what we're trying to do, and we would definitely address it in some different ways.
We're gonna do with this one
coming out the gate. But I think for right now, we want to figure out how we want to reinvest in that property that we currently own, or if we want to just sell it off. Not 100% sure. Still working through some ideas around that. And then secondly, what I'll say is our thought process was, with the baby coming, if we could get this tiny house project off the ground, we then had so much outdoor space to expand and utilize for family and running around and all these different things. That was kind of our thought process with having her. And now that we know it's going to be a while before we can get something like that going and find a new property and everything like that, we had been discussing some other options. So I guess I'll just say, don't be surprised if over the next couple of weeks you see a totally different type of content from us.
Stay tuned for some big news.
Yeah.
That Zalea is...
All right, guys. So here's what I've learned a couple things from that video. When you're going to go develop property, you definitely got to call engineers. You got to look at, the county restrictions, city restrictions, local municipality restrictions. Like, there's a lot of things you got to do, and you could do a lot of research on the internet. But one thing that I learned from this video is you can't just go by what's on the internet. And I don't mean just Google and stuff. I mean actually going to the counties or the city's website to go through these steps, or looking for these documents that are publicly available. You should go in person physically to look for these documents, because there might be things that aren't uploaded to the actual website. So I did learn that. Another thing that I learned is when you're looking at the way that your city lists how to go about zoning or the steps to develop a property, sometimes it's not the most practical, right? And therefore, you need to look at that list and think about what's the most practical. And in their case, they feel like they should have gone to their to the neighbors 300 feet or whatever or less away, and talk to them and let them know what their plans were, so that if something was to come up, it would be a much easier conversation when you need their blessing with something. For example, getting 51% of the votes so that they could develop this property. Very cool. Definitely worth watching. If you are into, if you want to get into real estate, or you're into real estate and you have any videos, you've watched this, you have any videos on real estate development, I'd love to hear more. It's something that I want to get into possibly this year. Me and my business partner, we've been looking at a few opportunities, and these are some of the things that we're learning. So this was cool. This was cool, guys. Listen, we drop daily content on this channel. I'm gonna be dropping as much as I can on this channel and my barbering channel. So if you guys like this content, let me know. We're gonna keep it going.